Well, hello everybody, and welcome to this webinar on the future of merchant acquiring. My name is Jeff Barraclough. I used to work in merchant acquiring, used to work for two of the large European acquirers. Now I write a newsletter called The Business of Payments, and I'm a commentator on what's happening in the European payment scene and a strong supporter of the MPE conference, which is taking place again in March next year, in 2024, in Berlin. Hope to see you all there. But in the meantime, we've got some interesting conversation for you today. I'd like to welcome Ralph Gladis from Computop and David Rintel from TrustPay. And we're going to talk about the future of merchant acquiring. Now, before we dive in, I'd just like our two guests to introduce themselves. And David, if you can go first, say a little bit about yourself and TrustPay. And also, if you could explain for those who don't know, what is a merchant acquirer?
Thank you for having me. So I'm David Rintel. I'm the CEO here at TrustPay. Been doing this in payments for probably 14 years, according to LinkedIn, at least. TrustPay is a e-commerce payment provider / acquirer. We're only focused on e-commerce, so everything I say today will be viewed through the eyes of an e-commerce player. So just a little disclaimer to start with. What is an acquirer? Let's see if I can get a textbook definition. I would describe an acquirer as a licensed financial institution that facilitates the acceptance of payments on behalf of its merchants. And by payments, within this definition, I would probably say card payments.
So it's very much card payments, Visa, MasterCard, Discover, UPI, and so on.
That is the narrow definition of acquirer. We could expand it to to include also other non-card-based four-party schemes like Ideal or Blake, but that expands the definition quite significantly.
Thanks, David. And you're based in Bratislava?
Yes.
Excellent. And Ralph, to introduce you now, Ralph Gladis from Computop. And Computop's not an acquirer, but you're a payment service provider and gateway. So maybe you could explain again a little bit about what that is and why it's different to an acquirer.
Thank you, Geoffrey, and thank you for the invitation. My name is Ralph Gladis. I'm founder and CEO of Computop Paygate. Our headquarters is based out of Bamberg, Germany, and we have offices all across Germany, but also in the UK and in the US. Yes, we are not an acquirer. However, we are connected to more than 50 acquirers worldwide. Nearly everyone in Europe, many acquirers in the US, also Asia, South America. So we have an independent view on acquirers. So I'm looking forward to the discussion. What do we do? As a payment gateway or payment service provider, we connect merchants with a different banking system all across the world and different acquirers. Wherever they need acquiring, we will be able, or we are able to connect them everywhere with POS, with e-commerce. So we are, as a gateway, we are a step in front of, a layer in front of the acquiring, and we are able to do payment orchestration. We are able to send transactions, card payments, but also alternative payments to every payment system behind us. That's what we do. Actually, we're often talking about acquiring, but I think the PSPs and the gateways, they have a very strong customer relationship. It's important to look at the technical side of acquiring too, because PSPs and gateway do a lot of things before it comes to the card payment actually. But that's for discussion.
Thanks, Ralph. And maybe I could just ask you to. Clearly, the market is changing. We're getting much more e-commerce. We're getting much more cross-border transactions. We're getting many more organizations that are trading both online and in store. How is that changing what merchants are demanding from their acquirers? Maybe David, if you want to go first.
If you look at the e-commerce payment landscape over the past, say, 7 or 8 years, it has become increasingly more fragmented. So payments people often talk about APMs or alternative payment methods as, which would invoke this sort of fringe payment method in a particular market, which is quirky at best. But if you look at many European markets, like the Netherlands, it has been dominated by Ideal, which has 75–80% market share on e-commerce. So I normally argue that the most popular alternative payment method in the Netherlands for e-commerce payments is MasterCard, because Ideal certainly is not an alternative. And a very similar thing has happened in countries like Poland with Blik, which went from 0 to I think 65+% market share in some 5–6 years. You look at Denmark with mobile pay, Sweden with Swish, and we could go on and on and on. What that creates is a jungle of payment methods, which the merchants need to navigate. If they're only selling in one country, it's easier, and you can integrate 2, 3, 4 payment methods, and you're by and large fine. Once you start selling cross-border across Europe, that's when the situation becomes more exciting. So ultimately, the merchants are looking for a tailored or a good mix of payment methods relevant to their business model and to the geography they're trying to cover. They want the ability, so they want their payment provider to be able to react to new trends, which has become quite an important aspect over the past couple of years. They want a platform, and I will very much agree with Ralph that the technical platforms do matter. So they're expecting a platform which is modern but stable, which these two can sort of go counter to each other. They're looking for a very good price. Ultimately, there is a pricing pressure out there, and they want their payment provider to react to problems as they arise. And I also, like to say that merchants are not actually looking for acquirers. Merchants want payment service providers or entities that provide a holistic payment solution. That's what I ultimately care about.
And are you finding they're becoming more sophisticated in their buying behavior? So they're asking more difficult questions. They're talking more about acceptance rates and about differential routing and orchestration and other options?
Depending on their size, I think with every time you introduce a new payment method to the mix, it geometrically or if not exponentially increases the number of potential issues you can run into and the number of potential questions that the merchants may have or issues they may encounter. So I'd say on the one hand, they're becoming more sophisticated. On the other hand, the number of payment options is increasing to the point where their sophistication goes hand in hand with payments becoming more complex.
So Ralph, you mentioned you used the orchestration word earlier on. And this is obviously a new category. We're seeing businesses that call themselves orchestrators. But I think that they may be doing things very similar to what Computop has been doing for years in terms of offering a range of different options. But are you finding merchants also beginning to have more detailed conversations about what happens to their transactions and where you send them and what different acceptance rates might be in different routing?
Yes, but that's not new. I like the term orchestration because it's so clear what it does. Yeah, many people working together, and it makes a great sound, so it works in the end. It does a good. It gives you a good sound, and it works well. However, there are a few things that are really new to us, because at Computop we've been working for many large international merchants, so orchestrating payments in terms of sending transactions to different acquirers in the US compared to different acquirers in Europe, and adding some different fraud prevention in the US and Europe, because continents are different, consumers are different in different countries. That's not really new to us. I think from my point of view, what is new is this detail you mentioned, Geoffrey, that a merchant could ask us, I would like to have 30% there and 70% there, but if the conversion rate goes down, please do it the other way around, send more to the other acquirer. So having such rules is maybe the only new thing. Yeah. However, yeah, Geoffrey?
I was going to ask, how does that affect your relationship with the 50 acquirers that you're connected with? Because presumably they're all talking to you, saying, please send me some more business. And I noticed that one of Europe's largest acquirers has taken a stake in Computop. And does that also have you learned anything interesting about the acquiring industry from being slightly closer to it now?
Well, we have very long-standing relationship with Nexi and Concardis, which is now Nexi Germany. So therefore, it's not really a new. I didn't learn something new really. However, we are diving a bit deeper into the acquiring business, because we are helping Nexi with migrating some of their merchants on the German and DACH platforms, Pay Engine, to Computop Paygate now. However, in general, Computop is and will stay acquirer agnostic. Nexi has a minority stake at Computop, and Computop is not going to be Nexi. We are Computop, and we all agreed that the position we have, being an acquirer agnostic gateway connected to many acquirers, has many advantages. Because actually, Geoffrey, you know that there is no such thing like global acquiring, right? Nobody can do this, really nobody. I tried so many times for my customers. For Australia, you need to connect there. For America, you need to connect there. And for Europe, you have to go here or there. So being connected to many acquirers is one of the key factors for success when you have large merchants. So just serving one acquirer, or for the merchant, just connecting to one acquirer never does the job. Yeah, even if you go to the likes of Adyen, even they have blank spaces. Yeah, really, it's important to have different acquirers. And although Nexi has a stake, Geoffrey, we'll keep it that way because our merchants need that support. But I would like to come back to your first question, which was, what are merchants asking for? And I think the best way of answering that is reminding ourselves what they ask for in RFPs. And what we can see is that they now not only ask for cool omni-channel solutions, they really want us to put these things in place now. For quite a while, omni-channel was in every RFP. But when it came to the decision, it wasn't that important. Nowadays, we really have to have proof of concept that the omni-channel cases really work. and that you're, for example, that the cash register in store is able to do refunds when people do return in store, and so on. And so that is one thing that we are really seeing happening for many years. It didn't, now it does. We see new technology being asked for, like tokenization, especially scheme tokens. Tokenization is not new, but the scheme tokens have the advantage that cards are always valid. Yeah, they don't run out of what's the word? There is no such thing like a valid date because it renews all the time. Yeah, so that's a big advantage that's asked for. Some of our customers even run their own regulation. That's interesting if you think about the future of acquiring. Like Otto Group in Germany, yeah, they decided to go for their own regulation, and they are a regulated financial institution now. Yeah. Well, as a next step, you could think, yeah, how much do they need acquirers and PSPs in the future, such merchants? Yeah. So how do we position ourselves if merchants go that deep into the financial supply chain themselves?
Well, it's a good question, and I was going to move the discussion on to talk maybe a little bit about the schemes, because merchant acquiring exists because Visa and MasterCard say it exists. So, I mean, essentially, it's a job as an agent of these two giant global organizations, which are the two most profitable companies on the planet in terms of what they do. So, David, if I could ask you as an acquirer. In general terms, I mean, how much time do you spend and your management team spend talking to the schemes and implementing moves and changes that the schemes tell you have to do?
As a company, we do spend a significant amount of resources with on scheme compliance. I personally, have not been tasked with this area, so personally, I'm fine. But it does, scheme compliance certainly is a big cost center. But if you're talking about schemes and costs, I think the ever increasing scheme fees are probably more costly than the underlying scheme compliance, as sort of as costly as that one might be, partially because we have taken decision to insource large chunks of the card acquiring tech stack. So many of the scheme mandates, we can handle the compliance in-house, and it does significantly reduce the amount of resources we need to comply with them.
Could you give some examples?
So, for example, we have our own 3D Secure MPI. We have, due to the fact that we integrate quite a number of different payment methods as our sweet spot, are merchants with cross-border sales outside of the tier one global level. We need to integrate a number of payment options into a single stack and provide a single point of reconciliation. So among other things, we handle all of the payment pages, the PCI associated with that, and everything else. Also, then it allows us to comply with various mandates around, certain transactions should not be authorized again. Some should be under some other circumstances. All the technical non-compliance fees associated with wrong routing and wrong transaction data and everything else. So that piece is handled in-house, and it makes our life somewhat easier.
I think this gives you more control. And does it also allow you to offer a better service to your customers?
It does. I'd probably react to Ralph's point in one aspect as to what merchants are looking for. It very much depends on their size. Computop's customer base includes very large customers, and naturally, a merchant selling globally with billions of annual revenues is very different to a merchant selling, let's say, only in 7 countries and with revenues for, let's say, 100 million. They're 2 completely different organizations. So, size will dictate their questions, and size will dictate their needs to an extent. It might otherwise appear that we're talking completely different things. So size does matter when it comes to merchant needs. Does control allow us to have to provide better service? The answer, in short, is yes. If there is a new relevant payment method in a particular market, we can add it into the tech stack without, add it to our own unified single API. The reconciliation doesn't change, the system doesn't change, the back office doesn't change. If there is a scheme mandate of technical nature, for the most part, if the merchant uses our 3D Secure MPI, we can pretty much assume full responsibility for whatever technical mandates come up, because they're using our systems and they're using our own platform.
Understood. No, that's really helpful. Ralph, I think you wanted to come in on this.
Yes, because I want to throw in some numbers. Maybe you don't want to, David, but I can, because we planned on our own regulation, and only the regulation, which is about processes and compliance, risk, AML, etc. That would have cost us, if we would have done it, that would have cost us around about $1 million, and that was for a very lean organization with 7 or 8 people working on this. However, I do know that only this regulation part, Geoff, because you asked for how much effort is it, how much time do you spend, 7 or 8 man years a year, and then that doesn't include the compliance for Visa and MasterCard. It's probably fair to say that something like that would have to be added, right? And I know some acquirers who have 20, 30, or 40 people in their compliance departments. So that's quite a lot of
it is
time spent and money spent on this business, on this compliance thing.
So it is significant, and presumably, David, you're able to recoup these costs from your customers, right? So you run a profitable business, so you're able to pass these charges on to your clients.
It is, any business has costs. Cost of compliance is a cost of our business, and you need to be able to, and be it, scheme compliance, AML compliance, or compliance with other legal norms. I'd argue that the scheme compliance is certainly the cheaper part of running a licensed payments business. Ultimately, if you are unable to comply with rules and regulations, be it state regulations, be it Visa Mastercard regulations, you can't run a payments business. And
you don't have a business, do you? At that point, it's kind of table stakes. Can I just I'd like to move on a bit, if I might, which is talking about distribution. So the small business market is the most profitable part of the market in all parts of the world. In America, half of new small business clients into the payment world are now buying their payment service from their software vendor, from what we call ISVs. We call them now independent software vendors, but the manufacturers of point-of-sale software for shops or for restaurants or for health clubs or whatever now come with integrated payments, and businesses buy the payment service included in the bundle, in the software bundle. So do you see this, firstly, do you see this coming to Europe? And secondly, do you think the disintermediation of acquirers and maybe their bank partners as well by these software vendors is going to be a threat to the profitability of the industry? I'll ask David to go first on that one.
So the e-commerce space I think is evolving differently to the point of sale space. In a traditional point of sale, and that's by no means my main area of expertise, so I will yield time to Ralph if he has a stronger opinion. The software vendor providing you with the bundle almost decides who the payment provider will be, because it is a standardized payment terminal. The merchant doesn't really care whether it's payment terminal A or payment
David, is that
terminal
not
B.
true online as well? So Shopify, if you buy Shopify, which is the most sold e-commerce platform for retail in the world, you have to take Shopify payments or they charge you a 2% penalty, don't they? So
it's even, so for the SMEs, it's even stronger in e-commerce than it would be in the point of sale environment. Because the ISVs in the point of sale space, for the most part, using the US example, they are just reselling a service. What Shopify does i.e. the agreement stays with the acquirer, and there is at least a theoretical legal relationship between the acquirer on the one hand and the merchant on the other. What Shopify does, for example, with Shopify payments in the SME space, is that they are essentially turning into payment facilitator. So they're the sole touch point, they're the sole point of contact for the merchant, and the acquirers are completely commoditized as essentially suppliers of Shopify rather than providers to the merchants.
But do you see this? So, as an e-commerce acquirer yourself, presumably you are looking to partner with software companies and be their preferred payment option, aren't you?
So what we do and what our strategy is, we are a direct to merchants business. We generally stay away from the very smallest customers. So, for example, the area where Shopify and other similar platforms tend to play, and we focus on merchants that are slightly bigger. So oftentimes they have their own customized platforms, and these merchants shop for payment providers directly. So we do not play. Yeah, so we are not going after the largest tier one merchants, and we're not going after the micro and small merchants either. And we sort of stay in between the two extremes.
So I mean, Ralph, you're Copytop is a kind of disintermediator of acquiring anyway. But are you finding that you're now being disintermediated by these software companies?
No, because if you look at it closely, Geoffrey, that's the normal business for me since 27 years, actually. We've always been, our company, Copytop, was founded in a student flat, yeah. So we didn't have large marketing budgets, and what we did is always looking on partners, yeah? And we kept that. Now we are 170 people on 3 continents, and we are still working with partners. Why do we do that? it could be an ERP system like SAP. It could be a shop system like Salesforce or Oxid or others. Yeah, being part of a partner network always helps to win customers and to show that they are really getting what they need, because they know that the partners like SAP in Computop or like anybody else, they work together for their benefit. Yeah? So I'm not surprised that this is coming up, but for us it's a normal business. However, I do not like what Shopify is doing, because they are forcing their merchants into one acquirer relationship, or punishing them if they want to use their own acquiring or their own PSPs, because they have to pay additional fees. Yeah. And what I can tell you from our many acquiring relationships that are all up and running, there is no best acquirer. Yeah? You need to look at the business, at the country, at the channel. Is it an e-commerce acquirer or a POS acquirer? Yeah. If someone like Shopify forces its customers into a special relationship for their own benefit because they get all the provisions, yeah, that's not a very good thing for the customer. Yeah. So what we are doing when it comes to disintermediation is more like we are looking at the customer and we are telling them, hey, for e-commerce in Asia, you should do this. For point of sale in the US, you should do that. And then the system is, let me use that term again, orchestrating it. Yeah.
Well, it's certainly true. The software industry is getting very excited. I was at a seminar last week with some software companies, and they've all realized, hey, we could double our revenue if we can sell payments as part of our bundle and get a commission from the acquirers. And they're very excited about this opportunity.
You can force SMEs into this, but that's not our main target group. At Computop, we have the likes of 6 car rental and Otto as customers, and nobody forces them to do anything. They decide what they want to do. For SME business, that might be interesting. For large merchants, it would never work. You have to explain them why this one is better than the other one.
I think Ralph, the reason why it's of huge relevance to the acquiring side of things is because acquirers typically make 2/3 of their profit from the small business market and 1/3 from the enterprise market.
I know.
It's a bit of a threat.
However, Geoffrey, if I may, I would like to put a few pieces of the puzzle together where we're coming from, because a few questions before you ask whether regulation and the scheme regulation would help with the customer service. And from my point of view, it does in a way that the consumer can feel safe about his payments. Yeah, so on that level it does. However, if you look at regulation in general, and remember we were very close to be regulated, so we filed 1,100 pages of with BaFin. And I would say regulation in general is not helping with innovation. Yeah? Given that innovation, on the other hand, is what we hear in RFPs. Merchants want omni-channel use cases to be established. They want new products like click to pay, like tokenization, etc. It's very hard for an acquirer, because it's a regulated financial institution, to do all of that, because, when you are regulated, you have something like a new product process, and it's a nightmare. Yeah? It takes a lot of time, takes a lot of documentation. So being innovative for an acquirer is not easy. Yeah? And therefore, I think we have this combination of the regulated financial institution and the PSPs and gateways, which are not regulated, who can do all these things without being bothered with too many regulated processes, including the scheme regulation. So it's a cool concert. Yeah, if we take this word orchestration again, yeah, we are the acquirers and PSPs and gateways. We are part of an orchestra. And there are things acquirers can do better, and there are things that ISVs and ISOs can do better because they are not regulated. Yeah? We need to add value to the acquiring of our acquiring partners.
Understood. We're slightly short of time, so what I'd like to do is just fire one last concept at Ralph and David. So one of the major threats regarding to the card industry, and of course acquiring is primarily around cards, is open banking. So if I could just ask you both briefly, do you think that open banking will take market share from cards in the foreseeable future? And if it does, are there any ways acquirers can make money from open banking? So, David, do you want to go first on that, on open banking?
I think it's an open secret. Open banking, within its narrow definition, doesn't exactly work as expected. Now, Ralph would probably say that he expected it not to work in exactly this manner. The overall open banking is plagued on the one hand by inferior user experience, and on the other hand, the APIs, just the bank APIs, just not really working the way you would expect. Now, I would agree with Ralph that it's very difficult to mandate or legislate innovation. You can legislate compliance to a certain minimum standard, but every time you try to legislate through innovation where something actually should work against the will of the providers, you end up with a product which is which leaves a lot to be desired. Let's put it that way. However, the APIs and the user experience is becoming, it is improving over time. The tempo at which this improvement takes place, again, is up to a debate. What I would probably like to point out, however, is that threats to cards do not only come from open banking. Both on e-commerce and on point of sale to a lesser extent, you see a lot of initiatives out there that actually do work. I've mentioned Blink before. If you go to Copenhagen and you go to a Sunday market outside, you'll see that people are using mobile pay for small payments. So there are many initiatives that have really taken off in the individual European markets. There is there are a few drawbacks. Excuse me?
Can you make money out of them?
Yes, you can. So we support a number of different payment methods, and you can run them while making a profit. I am of the opinion that if you are an acquirer and the only thing you do is that you act, as you very correctly pointed out, as an agent of essentially two card associations, then you should not be surprised that at some point someone like Spotify comes along and just eats your pie. At the end of the day, you do need to add value somewhere, and maintaining a healthy mix does make a difference. And I think in Europe, if you look at because while politicians can't really legislate innovation, they have the ability, and the regulators, they have the ability to push the market in a certain way. And there's been a very strong push in Europe for past at least 10 or 15 years to establish some sort of a pan-European alternative to the two card associations. Open banking, I see open banking as the latest iteration of the same. Is it going to work? I'm not sure, but maybe the answer in Europe is QR codes with, say, for instance, if you read the latest European retail payment strategy, it's a pretty interesting document to read. And if I had to bet on something, it would be that the dominance of predominantly of the two card associations in Europe is going to wane in the foreseeable future. And if you just remain an acquirer, you will become increasingly less relevant.
Oh, that's very interesting, David. So the advice is to make sure that you've got all the bases covered, no matter what schemes emerge and what merchants want to pay with. But Ralph, can I just turn to you briefly before we close on open banking? Is it going to happen? And if it does, can acquirers make any money out of it?
Well, I'm convinced that the future of acquiring is about adding value to acquiring. So make it worth more than just moving money from a card to an account. And adding value could be open banking too. Yeah, adding value could be like fraud prevention, could be automation for accounting. There are many ways of adding value for helping with the Internet of Things, tokenization, etc. There are many things we can do. When it comes to open banking, what are we talking about? We're talking about payment initiation service and account information service. That's actually what it is. And our merchants always ask us, Ralph, why do I need a payment initiation service? I already have online bank transfers. So what's so much better? Then I can tell them, hey, it's up to 100,000 euros. That's not bad. But who actually needs that? Yeah? And for the consumers, we still have this riddle, which is not solved yet. Who is going to protect consumers when something goes wrong with their transaction? So there is no scheme. Yeah, there are very many good things about the schemes like Visa and MasterCard, and the fact that there is nobody to protect, and don't think of banks to protect their consumers. Yeah, forget that. Yeah. There is nobody who's protecting the consumers, and that's why it's hard to sell. Yeah. The other thing is about before I go to account information services. Currently, at least in Germany, first the banks try to avoid payment initiation service by providing a very bad API, and they had to be forced to improve that by courts. Yeah, so they try to avoid it, and then as they were forced to provide better APIs, then they raised the price for the consumers. Yeah, so it's really we are connected. We like open banking. Yeah, it would be a good thing to do. So that's why we're connected to Token and to Tink, and we can offer it. However, with the current circumstances, it's a hard thing to do. So we are waiting on the regulation of pricing so that banks are forced to reduce their price to a normal level and not avoid open banking, because that's what they currently do. Yeah.
That's interesting, Ralph, and it echoes some of the things we're hearing in the UK as well, where open banking payments also is not yet taken off for a variety of the same reasons that you're talking about. But I think I'm going to need to hold the discussion there because we are out of time. It's been fascinating. Future of merchant acquiring. Thank you to Ralph Gladis from Computop and David Rittel from TrustPay. And thank you to the organisers of the Merchant Payment Ecosystem Conference, which is taking place in March 2024 in Berlin. If you like the debate, you want to hear more, you want to meet the people, please buy a ticket and come to Berlin. But for that, thank you very much.